Hello and welcome to my world. Today I'm going to be showing you my modified Tamiya Bull Head truck that I have nicknamed Raging Bull. And I chose the name Raging Bull because I liked on the ESP King Clod how ESP kept part of the original Clod Buster name in the name King Clod. So with this truck I wanted to do the same thing and keep the original Bullhead name in the nickname. So hence the name Raging Bull. And I like the way the name Raging Bull sounded. So first of all, before I get started here, let me explain why I chose to modify a Tamiya Bullhead. And it all starts out when I was a kid, and ever since then I have always liked monster semi-trucks for some reason. So even when I was a little kid, I had an obsession with them. And the very first Stomper style toy truck that I had when I was a kid, anybody remember Stompers? They were the little battery powered trucks that were powered by a AA battery. Well, I absolutely loved those when I was a kid, but the very first one that I ever got was actually not a Stomper. It actually was a similar toy line called Rough Riders. Anybody remember those? They were made by the toy company LJN, and they were the basic same type of little 4x4 motorized trucks that were powered by a single AA battery. So the first Rough Rider that I ever got was a black semi-truck body that was on a 4x4 monster truck chassis. So it was very similar to a little tiny Tamiya Bullhead. And I thought that the Bullhead, for some reason, has never had the same kind of love that the Clod Buster has always had. Everybody loves the Clod Buster, but for some reason the Bullhead just seems to always get overlooked. And I wanted to build a version of the Bullhead that kind of looks like my other Clod Buster trucks, but just didn't have a Chevy pickup truck body on it, for something a little bit different. So I felt that the Bullhead just needed some love, so that's why I built up this truck. So on top of this truck is the stock Bullhead body, and this is one of the parts I had left over from the two Tamiya Bullhead kits that I bought originally to build my 6-wheel drive Bullhead truck that I called Chernobog. So to build that truck I bought two complete brand new Bullhead kits, and this was one body ended up on Chernobog, and this is the second unused body that I had left over. And this body is painted Subaru World Rally Blue, and that is the metallic blue color that Subaru uses on all of their rally race cars, and it's also a stock color on the WRX and WRX STI. So I really love those cars. So I wanted to paint my Bullhead in World Rally Blue, and most Bullheads are painted, the stock manual suggests to paint them in blue mica, which is a color of Tamiya spray paint. And blue mica is a light blue metallic color, and I wanted something that was also blue because I like the look of blue Bullheads, but I wanted it to be just a little bit different than everybody else's out there. So the blue mica is a little bit of a lighter shade of metallic blue than World Rally Blue. So this one is a little bit darker, but in the sunlight it actually looks a little bit lighter than it does here indoors. But this paint job was not done by me. I am a terrible body painter. So my previous Tamiya bodies were painted by the RCMT member that went by the name Hot Rodical Customs, but he no longer paints bodies. So this body I had to send out to a local body shop near me to have it painted, and they did an absolutely fantastic job. They knew exactly about what color World Rally Blue was because they paint a lot of WRXs and WRX STIs there, and they not only painted the body in that color, they also painted the underside of the body and inside the fender wells, as you can see right there, and they also put a few coats of clear over it. So they did an absolutely fantastic job, and this was the first RC car or RC truck body that they had ever painted. They have only painted full-size cars, of course, and also some RC boats, but they had never done a Tamiya truck body like this before, or any RC car body before. So I was a little cautious about it, a little worried about it, but they did an absolutely fantastic job. The decals are the stock Tamiya flame decals from the Bullhead kit. So I put those on the hood, on the top and on the sides, and also underneath the cab doors, just like in the instructions tell you to do. I did not put on the Barbarian Berry decals, so there's no guy with the Viking helmet on the side doors. I always thought that kind of looked a little silly. Always made me laugh when I saw those. But so no, Barbarian Berry is not the driver of my Bullhead. To put the flame decals on, I use the diluted dish soap method, and let me tell you, that is the only way to get these decals on straight. They are so big and so bulky when you cut them out, so it's almost impossible to perfectly position these on the hood and on the sides of the hood like that. And it's especially hard once you get, say, the left side of the hood done, decal done, and then it's impossible to match the right side, to get the right side flame decal in the exact same position as on the other side if you don't use that dish soap method. So I'll leave a link in the description below about how to do that dish soap method for sliding the decals on, and it is an absolute game changer as far as installing especially these large decals like this. And one of the reasons I like the Bullhead so much is that body itself. Ever since I was a kid, I have loved the Super Pete monster truck, which was a truck that had a Peterbilt semi-truck body on a monster truck chassis. And that truck was built by Mike Welch, and I actually liked that truck so much as a kid, I went out and I bought a huge poster of it, and I hung it on my bedroom wall. So I've always loved, for some reason, I may be the only guy, based on how unpopular the Bullhead is compared to the Clod Buster, but I may be the only guy that just absolutely loves semi-trucks bodies on monster truck chassis. The chassis of this truck is an aluminum tub chassis made by Sassy Chassis, so don't look for it now. Sassy Chassis has long since gone out of business, and I bought this one brand new off of eBay, and the seller sold it as a rolling chassis, so it had a complete front and rear gearboxes and axles and motors from a Super Clod Buster, and it also came with some aluminum aftermarket parts that I reuse, so I'll talk about those in this video. One of the things I love about the Sassy chassis for the Clod Buster is that they have adjustable heights, ride heights on them. So that's why there are these extra holes here in the chassis, and also on the suspension mounts right here. There are extra holes there, so you can adjust the chassis to any one of 3 different height settings. And I have mine cranked up to the very tallest height because this is more of a show truck, and I wanted it as high as possible because that's how show trucks were in the 1980s when I was a kid. The wheels on this truck are JPS Deluxe Star wheels, and the tires are stock Clod Buster tires. And I absolutely love these wheels. They are the same wheels I have on my Clodzilla 4 Gravedigger truck. And these I bought brand new recently off of eBay. Some guy had just some brand new ones still in the bags. Just collecting dust at his house, so he decided to sell them. And I bought them, and they are brand new. There are no dents, no dings, no scratches on them at all, unlike the JPS wheels I have on the King Clod. These are Pargu machined aluminum ladder bars, front and rear. Those are the first ladder bars I have bought that were not the JPS ones, and they are very nice. They fit very nicely, and the machining quality on them is very nice. One thing they do not have, though, unlike like the JPS ones, is that they do not have machined plastic bushings. inside the ball joints right here. So they do have aluminum on aluminum contact in that ball joint. So the JPS ones, as I said in my King Clod video, the JPS ones are the only ones that have nice machined aluminum bushings inside that ball joint right there. The gear cases are hot racing, machined aluminum black ones, and the axle tubes were from the original when I bought the Sassy chassis. Those were included with them. Those are also made by Hot Racing, and the knuckles are aluminum Hot Racing ones too. And this is the first time I've ever used Hot Racing components on a truck, so it was kind of wondering whether they were the right way to go, but now that I have them in here, I really like them. All the stock Tamiya gears and axle shafts fit in them perfectly with no problems whatsoever. I was a little hesitant to use the black gear cases. I'm not a big fan of machined aluminum black anodized components bolted up to regular silver aluminum parts, but now that I see them together side by side, I think it looks really nice with the black and silver color scheme. But initially I was a little hesitant, and if I could do it all over again, I think I might prefer the original Hot Racing plain machined aluminum gear cases, but Hot Racing has not made those for quite a few years now, so all you have available are the anodized black ones like this. After seeing them together like this on the truck, when it's all done, I think they look pretty nice. The steering bell crank is a machined aluminum one. That's right here. It's a machined aluminum one made by UK Monsters. It's the same one that I have on the ESP King Clod, and it's really nice. I really like that one. It rotates on smooth ball bearings, so it has no slop in it. All of the steering linkages in this truck are made by Crawford Performance Engineering, and the twin tube lower bumpers on this truck on the front and rear right there, those are actually ones that I bought from eBay. Those are not ESP twin tube lower bumpers, and I think they're copies of the ESP ones because they're very, very similar. And the gear cases, or excuse me, the gear case skid plates right down here, those actually are old ESP ones that I had lying around in my spare parts box, and they were brand new, still in the original packaging from way back in the day, and they bolted right up to the eBay twin tube lower bumpers with no problems. The shock absorbers on this truck are internal spring 90mm long Hot Racing shock absorbers with the anodized black bodies, and I have 4 of them per wheel, so there's 16 total shock absorbers on this truck, and they are mounted with an ESP King Clod quad shock absorber set mounting kit. And if you look at the lower bracket, this is the original lower bracket that came, shock bracket, that came on the ESP King Clod. If you look at my video of that truck, you'll notice that I make a mention of this in the video, that I had to make new lower shock mounting brackets to fit on that truck, to fit on its JPS ladder bars. And so I took off the original ESP quad shock mount brackets, and those are the brackets that are used right here. The upper quad shock mount brackets, those are not the original ones that came with the ESP King Clod and came with this lower quad shock mount bracket. The upper brackets are actually the brackets from an old ESP Clod Buster suspension lift kit that I bought way back in the late 1980s for my Clod Buster. And the quad shock mount brackets, the upper ones, all they are is the shock lift mount plates from the ESP suspension, Clod Buster suspension lift kit, and they just had 2 extra holes drilled in them. So aside from that, they are the exact same aluminum brackets. So I just took my old Clod Buster ESP Clod Buster suspension lift kit, took those old plates that I had just, once again, sitting in a box collecting dust after I put on the Clodzilla 4 kit onto my Clod Buster truck, and just had these just sitting around collecting dust, so I drilled extra holes in them for the extra shock absorbers, and I used them on this truck, and they are absolutely identical to the ESP Clodzilla or Clod Buster quad shock mounting kit. They're the exact same brackets. Connected to the gearbox right here is a hot racing anti-rotation bracket. Those are used in the front and the rear. Those are also made out of aluminum. And the motors are Team Brood Racing 23 turn single motors, front and rear. And those are the motors that Team Brood Racing makes specifically for the Clod Buster. They sell them in matched sets, just like Trinity used to do back in the day. The heat sinks right here, these black aluminum heat sinks, so those, I actually got those off of eBay from a seller in China. And all of the black plastic stock parts that you see right here, the lower suspension arms and the front and rear bumper mount brackets right there, those are actually the stock parts from a Tamiya Clod Buster Chrome Metallic Special Edition. And I found a seller on eBay that was selling just those parts separately from the kits. So pick those up, because I have never liked the color scheme of the stock bullhead chassis with all the yellow plastic parts and the red chassis tub. Just never liked that, especially the yellow parts. I just never liked the look of those. So that's why when I found these for sale, I definitely snapped them up, because I absolutely love the black plastic parts instead. It just looks so much better. So all of the motor wiring is Dean's wet noodle 12 gauge wire, and all of the connectors are Dean's Ultra plugs. The rear of the truck has the exact same components as the front. So you've got hot racing gearboxes, hot racing shocks, hot racing axle tubes, and hot racing steering knuckles, and the eBay twin tube lower bumpers and the ESP skid plate down here, along with the UK Monsters steering bell crank right there. On the rear, a little bit different though, is that I do have an aluminum 3mm spacer here, and that is to keep the rear steering link right here from rubbing on top of the gear case right there. So I need a little space there. And the reason for that is because this truck has so much suspension lift on it that the gear cases are not in their stock position. So the geometry of the gear cases is a little bit different compared to on a stock Clod Buster or on a stock Bull Head. So I had to put that spacer in there. And that's one of the disadvantages of using the ESP quad shock kit, is that because it has these tall brackets on the lower portion right here and also on the upper portion right there, it makes so much suspension lift that it causes the steering geometry to have a lot of bump steer, and it causes the steering links right here to not have the same geometry as on the stock truck. So I had to add a spacer right there to provide adequate clearance there. Also on the underside of the chassis right here are original ESP suspension stabilizers right there on the lower suspension arms right there, front and rear. And just like the upper shock mount plates, these suspension stabilizers down here are from the late 1980s. Those are original ESP parts that came off of my original Clod Buster truck from back in the day. So had all those parts just stashed away collecting dust, and finally, after all these years, I found a use for them. So let that be a lesson to all you fellow pack rats out there. Save your old parts, you just never know when you may need them again. So it took me a long time, it took me a good 30 years to find a use for them, at least 30 years, more like 35 years to find a use for them. But I finally did. Just took a while. Inside this truck is powered by a Novak Super Rooster electronic speed controller, and the receiver is a Novak NER2X 2-channel AM receiver. And one thing I did with this truck that I learned from Chernobog, because with Chernobog I did the same thing, is the switch right here that normally on stock Clod Busters is used to control the motor wiring, either puts the motors in parallel or series with one another. This switch now controls the ESC cooling fan. I have a Novak cooling fan on my Super Rooster. And this switch here that normally turns on and off the radio equipment, that switch I have connected to the headlights. So the headlights are, if I swing around here, the headlights are, and the fog lights too, are one of those Tamiya headlight incandescent light bulb kits for the headlights. And here I'll turn it on. So there's the lights, and here I'll turn on the cooling fan right there. So I like how those switches fit inside those holes in the Sassy Chassis aluminum tub. They fit in there just perfectly, so I decided to reuse them again for different purposes. On the rear of the truck is a Novak LED brake light kit, and since I'm using a Super Rooster ESC, they act like backup lights, so they're not true brake lights, so they come on only when the truck is in reverse. And I added them to the sides of the chassis like this with servo tape, and I suppose I could have mounted them more flush, like in the body here or something like that, but I didn't want to drill any holes in the body because stock bullhead bodies are very hard to come by these days. And also, if you look at the tail lights that are on full-scale semi-trucks, they are not mounted like flush, or they're not seamlessly integrated into the body of the trucks. If you look at those brake lights on big rigs, they're just stuck on the bottoms or on the sides of the chassis, on the frame rails and stuff like that. So they're just stuck on there. So they kind of just look like this. They just stick out like that. So I did the same thing on Chernobog. So on any other truck, yeah, I don't think it would look too good, but since this is supposed to be a big rig, it looks just fine, I think. The rear trailer hitch ball is actually a stock Tamiya ball joint from a stock Clod Buster or Bullhead suspension arm. Normally those are mounted on the center of the chassis where the ladder bars connect to. And so that is my modified Tamiya Bull Head that I call Raging Bull. So this truck took about 8 months to build, and it was a lot of fun because this is the first brand new truck I had built in a long time. So it was fun to start building another new to me RC kit with this one. So it was a lot of fun. I hadn't built a brand new RC monster truck in quite a long time, quite a few years, so this was a lot of return to form for me, and it brought back a lot of wonderful childhood memories of when I first built my first Clod Buster. So I'll be posting a second video that also shows what this truck looks like with the body removed, so I can show some details of the chassis and the radio equipment. So stay tuned for that. And also, if anybody is curious about what the Super Pete monster truck was and what it looked like, I'll also be posting a video in the description below that shows Mike Welch's Super Pete truck. And that, if you look at that truck, that kind of shows why I like the Tamiya Bull Head so much. So, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll catch you in the next video.